Deal of just happenstance, as they say, serendipity, whatever. You disconnect the internal circuitry automatically by just plugging them in. So that was a new feature, and I think that made a lot of difference. 2600 synthesizers, unique, and I don't think anything else came out for the longest time like that. Yes.
My first attempt at broadcasting. Welcome, Alex.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm good, thank you very much.
Oh, this is so great. So I realized today when I was looking at my email that it's been almost exactly a year since Alex first contacted me and said, hey, is it okay if I ask you some questions? No obligation, of course. Very polite, straight to the point, but very polite. And the rest has been history in the making because I've never been part of a procedure like this, a process like this, and it's been fascinating on my end. And I'm sure it's been not what you bargained for on your end. So
well, yeah, I thought, I'll ask you a couple of questions, and then a year later we're unveiling the monster that is the 2-hour documentary.
That's it. So now here I am interviewing the interviewee, or is it vice versa? All right, so just want to let everybody know how this is going to work. I'm going to ask Alex some questions, and then he's going to show us around his studio, or maybe simultaneously. And then after that, we'd like to have some questions from you. So even if you don't see them live on Facebook, I will see them, and I can ask Alex, and we'll get them live as soon as possible. All right? All right, so let's go ahead and look at Alex's studio so we have a better backdrop. Here we go. There we go. All right. Wow.
Can you see everything?
We can see everything. Yeah. Okay.
I'll spin it around. That's a bit more.
Looking good there. Yeah. All right. So let's dig right in.
Okay.
So a basic question, which I'll probably be asking everybody, is how on earth did you first get into synthesizers?
I got into synthesizers in the 90s when I was recording in studios for the first time, and what tended to be in studios was mini Moogs, Model Ds. Those would be knocking around, and I always wanted one, and I could never afford one. Mm-hmm. So I've got loads of photos of me when I'm young wearing Moog T-shirts, but I never could buy one. And then over the years, I've just used software synths because I couldn't afford them, and then finally, kind of 20 years into a music career, I got into a kind of position where I could start affording to get some stuff. So I got a couple of hardware synths, and then once you buy a couple, this happens, doesn't it? Which is
they multiply like rabbits somehow. I don't know how that works.
It's everybody I know. They don't just nobody buys one synth.
You can't just get one, right?
No,
but you can stop anytime you want to, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I know that you made some other documentaries. What first got you into the documentary process in general, and then a documentary about ARP instruments in particular?
Yes. So it's all a funny way that kind of happened. So I'd been uploading stuff to YouTube just kind of for fun for a couple of years, and no one was really watching it because why would they? But and I was kind of looking at things to make films about, and it just so happened that someone was selling a Lin LM1 that they'd found in the bin, and they happened to be near me, and I got in contact with them and said, is there any way I could come and film something with this? I'll give you some money, because they're so super rare, and it was the first digital drum machine. So this guy met me in the street to check I wasn't some kind of weirdo, and he agreed, and I went back to his place and just filmed a little bit of stuff with this Lin LM1, put it online, and I sampled it, and I didn't know that I was the first person to give those samples away, because they only made 500 of those. No one else had done it. And that video kind of went viral, I guess. It had like hundreds of thousands of views, whereas anything I'd done up to that point was, a few hundred views or whatever. So I thought, okay, well, I enjoyed that, and people watched it. So I made another one about the Prophet synthesizers, and some friends of mine helped me with that, and then I kept on going, and then I did the Roland one, and which got bigger, so it was kind of spiraling from first film was like 5 minutes, next one was 20 minutes, and then the Roland one was over an hour. And whilst I was doing the Roland film, a guy called Ian Livingstone got in touch who'd seen some of my films, and he's quite a successful games composer, TV composer, and he's into synths in a big way. And he got in contact and said, "Do you want to borrow some synths for some videos?" To which the answer is yes.
No, I don't want to bother.
No, not at all. And he lent me. I was working on the Roland film at the time, so he lent me a couple of Roland synths that I hadn't managed to find, which was awesome. But he also lent me a 2600, which I'd never played. I'd seen them, but I'd never played with them. They were always this mysterious thing when you went into the studio that you were like, what on earth does that do? So I finished the Roland film, and then I turned to this 2600 and said, what's this all about? And I made that track, which you just played on the intro. So this was this time last year, and I was blown away by that instrument. It's just such an amazing synthesizer, as you know. And I thought, well, this is cool. And then it just so happened that in that video, just for a second, I flashed up an image, kind of cheekily, I found online, of a guy stood with a blue Marvin 2600,
Oh,
and it
wow.
just flashes up for a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
I found the image online. I didn't know who this guy was, and it just so happened that guy was Don Muro, and it just so happened he saw the video. So he got in contact and said, "Hey, I enjoyed your video. By the way, that guy who flashed up for a couple of seconds, that old vintage photo, that's me." And I was quite, what? So I got talking to him, and it turns out he knew ARP. He got that 2600 direct from David Friend. He worked with ARP. He bought the modular synthesizer lab project from ARP and took it over. So we had this long conversation. So then he put me. I had this 2600. I was having this conversation with Don. So, and ARP had obviously just been in the news because your father had just passed. So everything was kind of staring me in the face that I should make a film about ARP then. So I spoke to Mark. Don put me onto Mark Vale. Mark Vale put me onto you, and it then it built up like an avalanche from there, didn't it? I guess.
Yeah. Okay, that's quite a story.
It is, yeah.
But I know that there's been more stories that have kind of happened along the way with the film. It did not turn out the way that you expected, I believe, right? You had many surprises.
No, I didn't expect to be speaking to the people who were there. Obviously yourself included. Obviously, you know these people. It's your family story. It's your history. So you were able to hook me up to these people, and who were then able to hook me up to other people. So, I mean, we got stories in that film that no one had ever heard before, and I never dreamed that it would turn out like that. So yeah, amazing.
Any funny anecdotes? Anything surprises that happened along the way?
The things that made me laugh were the accounts. So Dave Frederick told me, and I've spoken to Mike Brigida, even though he's not in the film, but I spoke to him on email. Yeah. The stories of him making prank calls with the 2600, getting it to do heavy breathing down the phone. That really made me laugh. And some of Dave Frederick's stories are classic. They're probably the best few are in the film. David Friend did tell me the kind of uncensored version of what Steely Dan said when they that phone call. The kind of family friendly version is in the film. So that was quite funny. I think that I've since found out that they smashed up an ARP synth twice. They seem to have a thing for smashing. I don't think it's personal to ARP, but they seem to have a thing with smashing up instruments. I don't know why.
Oh, really? It's like a la Pete Townsend, kind of in the moment of the passion, or
I think
they're
like total perfectionists, aren't they? So if something goes wrong, they don't take it very well. So I think when the Odyssey went wrong, which is why they impaled it to the wall.
Oh my goodness!
and a soloist went wrong. So they threw it down the staircase and jumped on it. I've since heard, but that wasn't in the documentary. But so that was funny hearing that story and that. The other thing was the Jean-Michel Jarre leak. So I didn't know anything about it, and then it was leaked, and I just saw it, and of course it all went over the news everywhere. It's like Jean-Michel Jarre leaks the new 2600s being reissued. And I was like, what? Because we were deep into working on the film. So I called you and said, do you know anything about this? And obviously you did, but you couldn't say anything all this time. So we had this funny conversation where you said, I could neither confirm nor deny, so, which I took as, okay, that's obviously happening then. So that was quite funny, that little...
There were a lot of frantic texts that happened right around that time from a lot of people. I can tell you that because I didn't tell a soul that I knew about this. I didn't really know until much later myself. I mean, I was not privy. A lot of people asked me questions about Korg, and quite honestly, they've been wonderful to the foundation, but. They are their own company, and we do very different things. So Yeah, it was a, but it was a very interesting time. It was full of all sorts of intrigue and espionage. Yeah,
It's a hell of a reveal, though, isn't it?
yeah, it
To
really was.
have Jean-Michel Jarre leak the
Uh,
reissue. That's pretty cool.
and you're
You
very
couldn't.
clever with saying he left the door ajar.
You got it.
Anyone that sees his film, your film, Alex, will really get a sense of your wonderful sense of humor. You really can think on your feet, and you really have some really funny ways of creatively expressing yourself. So it's been a real pleasure to work with you all this time.
Oh, thank you.
Um,
Likewise.
so I have some questions that are really specific to um, your process. And
Hmm.
after I'm done, I'm going to invite other people to ask questions as well. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So this means anyone that's here right now, if you, I'm looking at my other screen. I'm a one
Yeah,
person
cool.
broadcasting at the moment, so I apologize. But you're welcome to ask questions. And if you don't see it on the screen, I'm going to feed them to Alex because he can't see them right now. Okay. So, all right. So as far as some specific questions. How did you make those awesome multiple keyboard hand films? Where you know,
Oh, what was split like a multi-screen thing
yeah, yeah,
in the yeah. So you just you have to obviously work out how the music's going to work first. So you have to plan it through, and then as you record each part, you film it, and you have to kind of think of the angles you're filming it from, thinking how it's going to piece back together, and then you just you have to film each part and get the take, which means you have to be able to play the whole thing properly, which means that sometimes you wind up doing loads of takes. And then once you've got those, you then just line those up with the backing track, and then you can cut backwards and forwards between them. And I think that works quite well because you then see what you're hearing. So yeah, that's all there is to it, really. It's more the execution isn't hard. It's more that you have to think through it ahead
yeah.
and plan it out.
Um, did you do? I mean, so you had to go to other people's studios or have other people send you things at certain points. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
yeah. So you traveled around in the UK mostly. Like when you
Just
were
in
with the
the UK.
Tony, when you were with Tony Gallagher. For those of you who don't know, is the he's the 2500 person that you worked with? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was key. So obviously the 2500 is like the first thing. It's like absolutely crucial. And the first thing I did was put a message out on the synth boards, like, has anyone got a 2500? To which I got loads of sarcastic responses, like, oh yeah, I've got six, you know. And I thought, where am I going to find one? And then a friend of a friend thought Tony had one, and he hooked me up with Tony. And Tony's an absolute legend. And we talked, and then the summer of last year, I went over to his place and turned up, and there it was. He'd taken it apart and he'd like varnished it and everything. So it was like absolutely, it looked like it was. I walked into this room and there was this, 2500 that looked like it had just popped out of, out of the ether. So that was amazing. We wound up with 3 2500s in the film. I couldn't believe that. There was then David Barron. Donated a track, which was awesome. So he's got a 2003, which is a bigger system. And then Vince at EMIAP did another demo with a big, he's got the wing cabs and everything. So at the start of that film, I was like, where are we going to find a 2500? And at the end, we had 3. So that's pretty cool.
Who knew? Yeah, we're hoping we're going to speak to David Barron soon about his. I got to play on both David's and Tony's. It was really fun. It was really fun.
You've played on Tony's?
I mean, not Tony's. I'm sorry. EMIAP's.
Oh, EMIAP's. Right, I was going to say.
No,
When did that happen?
no.
Cool.
All right. So as far as your own music making is concerned, what instruments do you regularly use? How do you integrate synthesizers and guitar? Because I often see you playing guitar in some of your tracks. Tell us a little bit
Yes.
about your music making process.
Yes, that's the ironic thing is that I am a guitarist. I'm not a keyboard player. So for my music for my YouTube channel, I will use everything, and I'm constantly borrowing stuff, which like that in the background, which I'll talk about in a minute. But in my work, which I work making music for TV commercials mainly, it depends what you're being asked to do. And I think the more instruments you've got that you can actually put your hands on, as much as I've got tons of stuff in my computer, as has everybody these days, there's always something, if I go this way, I've got like a double bass and a load of, guitars and violins, violas, there's a piano, there's a banjo, excuse all the crap at the other end of the studio. So I've always been about putting my hands on something, and I think that's always key. As much as you can do wonderful things in a computer, whatever it is, I usually start with something I can put my hands on, I'd say.
Okay. And do you want to show us around your studio just a wee bit before we get into some of the comments and?
Cool. Shall I go this way? I'll see how far I can stretch. I'm on a cable, so I've got this end. I can't see if you can see. There's all my guitars. Down this end, and I've I just showed you the double bass, which I do play, and that's been on a lot of stuff actually. That I've got a drum kit which is packed up. Sorry, this is the messy end of the studio.
We all have.
I've got a Yamaha U3, which is a really, really nice piano. That's been on music that's gone all over the world. That has. So, and then and then I've got some violin and viola stuff there. The first synth I'll come across is a little. Can you see that Roland? Roland System 500 that Roland gave me. Would you believe? Which is very cool. There's a couple of bits on the floor because I'm constantly moving stuff around. There's a Dave Smith Instruments Prophet Rev 2.
Oh, nice.
We love Dave Smith.
We do.
This is cool. So I'm going to be making a video on this. This is the keyboard for a 1979 Roland System 100M, which is behind me, which arrived from Japan, and it's in the original box.
Oh wow!
Ridiculous. It's in there, but I'll talk more about that. So that's who keeps a box for 40 years? That's what I want to know. I can't keep anything for 40 years. Korg MS-20. I've nicked the power supply for something else, so I can't play anything on that. But that's one of the synths I probably use the most. Everybody uses these. They're still making them. Korg are. People keep saying, "Can you reissue the MS-20?" So they keep remaking. I think they just put it out again, if I'm not mistaken. And the little sequencer for it. There was an ARP one of those, wasn't there? Of course. Mm-hmm. I've seen. Sequential Pro 1, which is, the classic from the early 80s. So I'd always wanted a Prophet 5, but they're ridiculously expensive now. So I found a really beat up Pro 1, which is like the monophonic Prophet 5, and fixed it up. And that's a lot of fun. It's Vince Clarke famously used that. Well, I mean, he used everything, didn't he? But it's on the Yazoo stuff. Here we go. There's Dave Smith. I've got a signed thing from him on the wall, which is cool. Oh, there's a balalaika and a ukulele back there, which I do use. And then we're over to the ARPs. So I found last year when I was working on the film a beaten up Odyssey. It was really beaten up in a shop in London, and they wanted a lot of money for it. And so we talked about it until it was something more reasonable, and I wound up picking it up, and then we got it fixed up. And so that is in the ARP documentary a couple of times. So that's obviously a classic. So that's the middle. That's got the filter in it that they had to change. That's the middle. It's slap bang in the middle. I forgot to say, I filmed with Dave Spears, of course,
Oh, yeah.
who is a wonderful, wonderful man, and he's got all three, which was awesome. He's got them in a rack, the white one, the black one, and then the orange and black, and then we've got the Avatar down here, which I'm hoping to get this up and running with a guitar. That's an ongoing thing, but I've got it hooked up down here at the moment, I think. Ooh, something weird going on there. Put that off. So yeah, I've just got it hooked up. I can't play with one hand, but I've got it hooked up with a Keystep Pro at the bottom. So it obviously hasn't got a keyboard, but I want to get that going from a guitar, which is the whole point. But the only recordings you've got of it from a guitar are in the ARP documentary. Drew Schlesinger and David Torn, it turns out. Yes, that's fascinating, that, because it sounds like, well, an Avatar. It doesn't sound like, it's weirdest sound, that hexaphonic pickup thing, the guitar synth. So I'm really intrigued to get it going. I've got the super rare. I've got the manual as well.
Nice.
I need to scan that because nobody has scanned that, I've discovered.
It's in the works.
Sorry, I lost you there.
Oh, it's in the works, but.
Oh. And I've got a couple of Avatar. Can you see that?
I can.
Like original. Yeah, those are original adverts that were in the UK. So that one advertises that the Avatar is at Stateside Electronics in Uckfield in Sussex, or it was in 1977, I assume. So a couple of little bits. This is nothing's patched into it at the moment. Right, this isn't mine. Actually, that's mine, but the rest of it isn't. So this is what I'm doing a video with at the moment, which is a Roland System 100M from 1979, and this is like a proper big. Don't know if you can see this. I'm trying to see what you can see. So this has got some of the rarer modules in it, like the sequence. It's got an output mixer. There's a voltage processor, summing mixer. The portamento, that's very rare, and the phase shift. So this is a beast. I've got 2 videos I'm doing with this. It just so happened I borrowed this as we went into lockdown, so I've wound up locked down with it, which is like, oh, what a shame. Oh, poor me. So yeah, I've done. There's a couple of videos coming with that. It's that's a very special thing. Over here, we've got some goodies. This is one of the rarest things I own, which is the original Simmons drum synthesizer. So I'm trying to do this one. Can you see that?
I can.
Simmons. So, that was found by a friend in the loft of a school that he worked in. And he sent me a message saying, do you know what this is? And I was like, are you joking? That's like the original, before Simmons Electronics did the famous SDS5 with the hexagonal pads that was all over everything. That was the first thing he did for a company called Music Aid in the late 70s. So I've done a video on that if you want to hear what that sounds like. It's really weird and really cool.
So when you say do a video, that you mean you do for your job because you create, you do music for advertising, or is this for personal, for your own?
I did a video of that for my YouTube channel. Yeah, I didn't do that for... I'm trying to think if I've used it on an advert. I really want to, just because it would be just funny for me personally to know that has been on an ad, but it hasn't yet. I think everything else has been on something. But yeah, I've got it's such a weird sounding thing. And I've got to get the Avatar on an ad as well. Actually, no, the Avatar's already been on an ad, yeah. But I need it from a guitar on an ad. But yeah, we've got the Roland stuff. This is Roland's first ever product. You hear that? It's like a little... it's like a rhythm machine from the early 70s. I've got that modded with MIDI so I can program it, because it's not programmable. It's like preset beats. And it's just that classic 70s sound. It's got, sambas and bosses. They just sound great, you know. They sound really cool, and it's like the CR78, which is very famous. It's not dissimilar from that. This is Roland's first ever synth. This is not mine. It's been on a very long loan. It was misbehaving. Is it working? Oh, it is, yeah. So it's got like a synth section. So this, they quite obviously looked at the ARP Pro Soloist, particularly with the follow-up. In fact, the follow-up's got some of the identical presets, which is quite interesting. But it's then got, you know, these little switches for presets, like trumpet, saxophone, which of course sound nothing like a trumpet or a saxophone. There's a piano on there, but it's monophonic. I don't know why on earth you'd ever want a monophonic piano, but yeah. And then you can do manual sounds up here. The Juno, which is just, that's one of my favourite synths ever. Everybody loves those.
Yes.
It's like it's a very common synth, isn't it? Everybody's got them. It's like it's got training wheels on it. I think that's why people like it, because you just can't go wrong, because there's really nothing on it, and it just makes you sound like you know what you're doing. So there's that. Yeah, and then I've got that's an original 303 for all the acid heads out there, which is obviously a very, very famous synth. And I've got that modded with MIDI as well, so I can play it from my computer, because it's famously really weird to program, but then that means that you wind up creating interesting things because nobody knew what they were doing. So they just jabbed about. 606, which I've got something in here. Oh, these two are hooked up. Little 101. So yeah, classic Roland stuff. I think pretty much all of this has been reissued in some way or another recently, but these are the originals. And they're a lot of fun. Little JX3P. I've got a little sound in there at the moment. Yeah. So that's a kind of, this was one of the first synths with MIDI, and it's got this really odd programmer that's magnetic, that like clicks to it. Which, yeah, so they released it, and to edit the parameters you had to do it all via menu driving, and obviously someone said that's not going to work, so they released this little programmer that you could buy separately. So that's I can hear this synth going away.
There's a little hum. There it went away. I heard.
Yes, I was like, what is still going? It was the 101. There's a DX7 at the bottom.
Oh yes.
Which I have a love-hate relationship with. It's so famous for the presets because nobody knew how to program it, which kind of it's famous, but then when you hear those presets, they're awful. So you think it's an awful synth because you just think of the really naff records that it's on. But people who knew what they were doing with it, of course, like Brian Eno, did amazing things with it. So it's like, if you spend the time with it, it's really cool. But the joke is that it's like painting a house through a letterbox, because it's, you've got this tiny little screen, and then you've got all the algorithms and everything mapped out, and you've got to do it all with shift functions. It's very 80s. In that regard, so I think that's probably why no one bothered programming it. I think we've got a little 707 tucked up here, which is very well known. I think I missed a couple of drum machines, did I? Yeah, there's an Oberheim down here. This is amazing, this thing. So this is one of the Tom Oberheim's creations. So it's got you can tune the sounds on the back with like a continuous dial, which is cool. So the DMX is really famous, which is on loads of hip hop and electro and stuff, and then this is the little brother of that, and then Dave Smith Instruments again. That's their drum tracks. What's funny about that is, I've since discovered, is that the EPROMs in it that create the sounds are a combination of the Lindrum and the DMX. And I've seen in Roger Lynn's NAMM Oral History interview, he mentions that he had a word with Dave about it at the time, but obviously they've since worked together. It's quite funny, but it's like a kind of hybrid thing that they did, but it's cool. I love the that really gothic text they have on it.
Oh yeah.
It's super cool, and they, in the sequential stuff, there's always little messages written inside and little handwritten. So there's a handwritten message inside the Pro One. I've got a photo of it somewhere, but someone's signed the date on it, which is cool. I think that's a really nice touch, being able to find out when it came off the assembly line. You know?
It makes it personal, doesn't it?
Exactly.
I think that's one of the things people find so interesting about the old instruments, is that there's a, like any old instrument, it starts to have a story, have a history of its own.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. And you also know that they didn't make any. Yeah, you know they were hand built, and you know they didn't make that many of them. So then that, that's part of the charm.
Yes, it is, and that's part of the frustration in the 2500 realm, anyway.
Yes.
We could dedicate a whole other episode to that. So, I know it's pretty late for you, and it's getting close to dinner time here. I don't know if there's anyone that would like to ask some questions. I do say Mark Marshall says hello and says that your videos are brilliant.
Thank you.
So
Thank you for helping.
Anyone that's still here, if you'd like to please ask a question, I'll field it to Alex. We'd love to hear back from you. We have Glenn in Australia.
Hey, Glenn. He was in the art film.
Yeah, he was in the... Hello, Glenn. Are you still here? It's hard to tell. Again, I'm sort of new at this whole broadcasting thing. Well, one of the things that's going to happen now is I'm going to, once this video is done, once our live is done, I'm going to post this up on YouTube, and there'll probably be more questions that people will want to ask along the way. But are there any closing statements you want to make about the ARP film? Will there be a director's cut, another version, a post 2020? I know you have this is a big year for you in a lot of ways, so I imagine that you're putting some filming aside. But
yes, there's that.
We do have some questions coming up. Good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think there's a couple of bits that we were going to do for the film that had to be postponed because of the pandemic. So there are some bits of unfinished business that would be nice to do. Yeah. And there's still so much to the story. I mean, even at the end, we were still talking to people from ARP who I hadn't spoken to, who were giving me more information and more information. So there's still stories to tell. So yeah, who knows? We might do a few little extra bits, a few little follow-ups. But yeah, I mean, I was speaking to Dave Spears and Chris McLeod from G4 Software, and when they did Bright Sparks, which obviously you were involved with as well, they said what's interesting is depending on how you edit something or who you speak to, you can probably tell a story loads of different ways, which is so I guess there's still so much to be said about ARP even after a 2-hour documentary. Yeah,
there's a lot. Okay, so we have some questions coming in.
Okay.
The first question this is from Rich Formadoni from Casio and from the Pearlman Foundation, and he would like to know which of your vintage synths has required the most maintenance.
Oh, it's the Pro One. It's they're famously. There's a reason for that. They were trying to get the price down to make a synth for less than $1,000.
Yeah.
And the way they did that was they didn't compromise on the sound, but they did compromise on the build quality. And you could literally bend it if you want. And I think once every 6 months something goes on it. So yeah, it's the Pro One.
Answering Steve McQuarrie, where can we see Alex's films? Alex has a YouTube channel. Is it under Alex Ball or Alex Ball Music?
It's just the channel name is Alex Ball, but if you type in youtube.com/Alex Ball Music, that will go to it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, there's ELECTROMOTIVE is on there on both of our channels. Actually, there's some modifications that were made, so we already have a little director's cut going on.
We do, yes, yes.
All right. So another question we had from Nick Carlisle. He wants to. Here's a question for the world. Can someone please come and fix my Pro Soloist? And Alex, thanks for coming over to the film that day. So is this someone else who was involved with the film?
Yeah, I properly stalked Nick. so I needed a Pro Soloist, although we wound up with a couple in the end. And he cropped up in a group, Nick, commenting on a Pro Soloist and saying that he had a Pro Soloist. So I basically stalked him and said, "Excuse me, have you got a? I see you've got a Pro Soloist. Is there any way?" Yeah, and then a week or two later, I was filming his Pro Soloist with him. Really, he's a very, very nice man. So yes, thank you, Nick. I properly stalked you, but it was worth it because we got the Pro Soloist in the film.
Thanks. So. Glenn has a question. He says he doesn't see a mixer in your studio. Is everything going into PC, and how are you managing that?
So there's a Soundcraft. It's under here. There's a Soundcraft 22 MTK there, and that is an analog mixer, but it also it sends 22 channels of audio over USB. So it's an audio interface. So you can record. I did a video actually on my YouTube channel. I think it was called something like "Can I record all my gear at once?" Testing that out, and it was. So I hooked everything up and I hit play on a whole load of stuff and hit record, and it worked. So you can record 22 things at once if you set it up right. Yeah. So that's how it's hooked up, and it goes into a PC at the back. Yeah.
So having grown up in a household with a basement full of gadgets and whatchets and things, how does your family feel about it?
Well, it's always been part of my life. So it's do you know what? Now I've got a proper studio, so it's not like any of this stuff is in our house or something like that. So, but when I started out, I worked out of bedrooms. I worked out of at one point I was working out of a bedroom, and our youngest son was sleeping in that bedroom, so I had to take down his cot, record in the day and do stuff, and then come out and put his cot back up. So at certain points in our life we've been tripping over stuff. So now it's like you wouldn't know unless you were in here. So yeah, no, all good.
We have greetings from Italy. I'm sorry if these are not coming in order. Okay, so we have Nick Carlisle says it's a pleasure. Glenn Harlock is. Oh, there's Peter Churchyard. Hello, Peter. Peter's. I hope he's feeling well. Hey, Mary. So we got a bunch of people coming in again. This is so nice.
Is that Mary Locke?
It is Mary Locke. Yes.
Mary was a great help behind the scenes on the film.
Yes.
Yes. So Mary was there on the last day. I've discovered from Mary that in the film, Don said that he got an invoice from ARP and a delivery from was it June 19th, 81? And he said in the film this must have been one of the last things going out of ARP. And then Mary sent me her redundancy letter, which is dated June the 19th, 81 or whatever. So it was literally the last day. So that was a little bit of information we since found out. So that's yes. Very interesting.
Very cool. All righty. So, let me make sure I covered everyone. I hope so. It's hard to see. There's kind of people popping in and out. All right, I think that's it.
Uh-huh.
Any more questions before we go? And if I've missed something vital, please give me a nudge, and I will be happy to. Okay, I think we got it covered. All right, let's just. Anyway, Alex, I posted your website. You should see Alex Ball Music. It has a plethora of information and links. Alex has a few Facebook pages as well as YouTube.
Yeah.
And he's got some very entertaining, very entertaining stuff. I've poked around a few of those back videos, and his sense of humor will be quite obvious to all of you. Anyway, it's been a real pleasure, and I thank you all for joining us on our maiden voyage of the Archives Live. Glenn, one more question. Glenn wants
Okay.
to know, after the lockdown, any plans to come and visit us here in Australia?
Not immediately. No, I'd love to get over there. In the immediate future, we're having a third child, so that's going to be my focus for a while. But we totally need to get over to your side of the world. But I don't know when. But yeah,
Yeah.
At some point. Yeah, I'd love to.
I'm hoping to make up for lost travel time myself very soon. Hi, Ian. Hello, Ian Stair. Very nice to see you up here. So we are pretty much winding down. I really appreciate everyone's participating here, and especially Alex for staying up way late.
That's fine.
He's practicing for the new child. And
Oh
so,
yeah. That would be far worse than this. Yeah, no. I've done that twice. I know that.
Hey Neil, how you doing? Thank you. I'm glad you like it, Neil. Alexander says it's great live video. We'll be doing some others. Maybe you would like to be part of it. If anyone is interested in being part of this series, has any ideas, any thoughts, or ways that I can improve, again, this is my very first broadcast. So please, I'm very happy to take any feedback that you can offer. And I will be posting this on YouTube as well. So, Alex, have a great night.
And you, thank
And
you.
everyone, take care, stay safe, stay healthy, stay creative. And hopefully we'll be seeing you all next week. We'll have Jennifer Harushka, who is on our board. Mary's on our board also. Teaches at Berkeley and has worked a lot in the synth industry. So I think she'll have some interesting stuff to show and some stories as well. All right,
Fantastic.
All right, take care.
All right, thanks for having me. All right, bye.